Caregivers and their families know the stresses involved with providing help to a loved one, and now Ohio has a law that supports them in their role. Doug Tayek is here to lay down the law for us. Doug is the Associate State Director for AARP in Ohio. Something that helps caregivers?
It does, yes.
We are all for that. And there's so many caregivers in Ohio, they really do need help.
That's right. There's 1.4 million caregivers here in Ohio. And if you take all the effort that they put together, they contribute at 1.4 billion hours, that's billion with a B, in unpaid family care. And if you take that and quantify it, say by $12 an hour, that's providing almost $16.5 billion in economic value to the state of Ohio through free uncompensated medical care. So AARP, as you said, we are committed to making this very difficult job of a caregiver a little easier. And this is where the Ohio Caregiving Act plays a role.
So what is the law exactly?
Right. So the Ohio Caregiving Act, as I said, it helps family caregivers manage the issues and the circumstances of their loved ones who are in the hospital, and it helps them as they transition home. And so basically it provides some common sense solutions that help make their lives easier as caregivers and as well as for the patient. And so this is why we worked with Ohio lawmakers to enact the law. And basically it recognizes the critical care that Ohio family caregivers provide in the care of their loved ones.
And time and money. So how does the new law help caregivers?
Right. So it touches on three very important pieces of the continuum of care. I can never say that. And the first is identification. So the hospital works with each patient to identify who their caregiver of choice is, and that caregiver is then placed in the patient's medical record so they can have access to information on how the patient's situation, circumstances, and it doesn't violate HIPAA. The second is notification. So a family caregiver is notified each time the patient is moved to a different unit within the hospital or is discharged to go home. The hospital has to notify the caregiver that move is taking place. And the third is training, and this is where the patient going home, this is the really important piece where the facility, the hospital, must provide training to the caregiver on any medical device that the patient is going home with, any medication that they receive, so that the caregiver can then provide a solid continuum of care for the patient once they are discharged from the hospital. And the idea then is hopefully they will not be readmitted and that their care improves and that they improve.
Right. So those sound like such important things. They weren't happening before?
No, they were not, which is unfortunate, but it's the reality. So just as an example, in 2014, 60% of all care recipients in Ohio did not have an in-home visit by a healthcare professional once they're discharged from the hospital. And almost half of family caregivers, about 46%, reported providing some sort of clinical care for their loved one, whether that was providing basic sort of menial tasks to actually helping with IVs and giving medication. And so about 78% reported having to do some sort of work around administering IV fluids or injections and doing things that really a healthcare professional would do in a clinical setting. So this is where the bill, we believe, really helps sort of arm the caregivers with the knowledge and the information necessary to provide those tasks in a safe and informed way.
The law has got to help a lot. It just makes sense.
Right, and again, it's we recognize that caregiving is a labor of love. Each of us have been a caregiver at some point for somebody that we know and whose life we cherish, but we also recognize that it can be a very stressful and overwhelming task. And so the job of the legislation is to provide sort of common sense solutions to help, and that's what the Ohio Caregiving Act does. And so that's why we've worked with the state legislature to make this a reality in Ohio.
And you've got wallet cards for people to be able to access.
These are, if you go to action.aarp.org/OH-caregiving or call 1-877-333-5885, you will be able to download or receive one of these wallet cards, which provides very important information and anything that we talked about, so that when you go to the hospital with your loved one or your loved one is discharged, you understand your rights and responsibilities that are guaranteed you by Ohio law in the facility. And so then you can use that to then start the conversation with the hospital and say, this is, I'm the caregiver, right. This is who the patient has said wants to be their caregiver, and these are the rights and responsibilities that we have.
All right.
And able to take action and help your loved one, which is the most important part.
Absolutely, so, yeah. I've got my card.
And as do I, and that's great to hear. So right. We hope everybody else does too.
Yeah, they got to get it.
Right.
The Ohio Caregiving Act provides critical information and instruction for the tireless caregivers helping their loved ones. My thanks to AARP for their efforts in making this law a reality. And my thanks to Doug for joining us today to share this important news.
For more information, call AARP Ohio at 866-389-5653 or log on to www.aarp.org/Ohio.